an argument with another child. I know you have that look on your face, don't you? One of the kids came home and they started getting into it with the other kid. And then one child said to the other sibling, "Stop judging me! Stop judging me!" And I'm sure my child heard this expression, "Stop judging me," either on the telly or from school. It's quite popular to say, "Stop judging me." And it's a surefire way to shut down a conversation. Do not judge. Jesus made this expression famous 2,000 years later, and we're still talking about it, and we're still using it. People love to quote Jesus on this one, even if they don't want to have anything to do with Christianity. Now that's the power of the things Jesus said. We're still talking about them, regardless of what we believe. Do not judge. That has some bite to it, does it not? Do not judge. When convenient, this is emphatically said by all kinds of people for all kinds of different situations. But is our understanding of this correct?
Yeah.
What did Jesus really mean when he did say, "Do not judge"? Let's find the answers, Matthew chapter 7. We will now read the original words of Jesus, and I'll let you be the judge. My goal today is this. Let's really begin to learn what Jesus meant when he said, "Do not judge." And let's examine why he said this. Then we can start putting this teaching into practice. Matthew 7, verse 1. Do not judge, or you too will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged. And with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye, and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? How can you then say to your brother, "Let me take the speck out of your eye," when all the time there is a plank in your own eye? You hypocrite! First, take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. Do not give dogs what is sacred. Do not throw your pearls to pigs. If you do, they may trample them under their feet, and then they'll turn and tear you to pieces. Verses 1 and 2. It's helpful to know the Greek on this one. When we see "do not judge," it's in the present tense. You may just want to write that in your Bibles if you still have one of those with real pages. Take a note on that one. Do not judge is in the present tense. So in other words, this is very important to our understanding on this. What Jesus is saying is, do not continuously criticize others. Do not sit in constant judgment of other people. In other words, don't overstay your welcome in someone else's mind, critiquing their motives and their actions. Now this is vital too. Jesus is not saying to never judge other people. He's not saying that here. In fact, it's impossible to live a responsible life without making judgments about other people. I mean, we make judgments about other people all the time. That's life. Who here owns a car? What if after we finish here today, I asked you if I can borrow your car tomorrow to drive up to Aberdeen? You say, okay, sure. No, have you seen me around a car in this country? You better think about this again. Have you seen me drive into a roundabout in this country? I'm from America. We drive on the other side of the road. If you've given me a lift before in your car, chances are I've walked to the driver's side accidentally to get in as your passenger. You have a judgment to make about me, whether or not you're going to let me borrow your car tomorrow. If you say no, that's not a sin. You see? You're making a judgment. You need to make a judgment. If you're a parent, you and I need to make judgments all the time about who we're going to let our children spend time alone with. That's important. Judgment is a God-given responsibility. It's a gift. It's a part of life. You know, spiritual judgment is also a critical part of the Christian life. Look at verse 6. We can't ignore that. It seems so much out of place when you read this passage by Jesus. But if you read verse 6, in a very intense way, using animals, Jesus is saying, don't give pigs and dogs the treasures of the kingdom, because they're just going to waste them. How do you know who the pigs and dogs are? Well, you're going to have to make a judgment. God have mercy. If you look down in verse 15 of chapter 7, a judgment must be made. Jesus says, watch out for false teachers. That involves a judgment about a person. So there are many, many spiritual judgments that God actually empowers us to make. He entrusts us as Christians. He expects us to make judgments that involve people. So I'm going to email many of you with more notes on this, more Bible study, where you can examine this topic of judgment, so you understand it, can live it out, and can help other people without too much judgment. So to clarify any confusion, when Jesus says, do not judge, He's not telling us to never make judgments. In fact, as I said, there are many judgments that God entrusts us to make. But what Jesus is telling us is this: do not continuously criticize others. Do not habitually criticize others here, here, and here. Heart, mouth, mind. Because if you do, if I do, if your heart is in the habit of doing this, you will receive the same treatment. That's the warning. If you judge others too much, you're going to live a life feeling judged by the people around you. If you guilt other people out, you're going to feel that guilt in your life. Does anyone want to live in that place? That's not where we want to be. That's not the Christian life. What comes around goes around, says Jesus, both in this lifetime and then on the judgment day. Judgment with a capital J. Still confused? Is everyone with me? Are you confused? Well, it is. This is a difficult passage. It's been misused and abused, including by people like me. But if we still have confusion, keep in mind Jesus, He was raised by a carpenter. So He's probably remembering His daddy's work as we read verses 3, 4, and 5. This is very real to Him. this example that he gives. And it's a reality check for us. Let's read it again. Why do you look, verse 3, why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? How can you then say to your brother, well, let me take the speck out of your eye, when all the time there's a plank in your own eye? You hypocrite, or you actor. First, take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. Verse 3, the context here, Jesus says, in your brother's eye. Those are some important words. He's talking about like-minded people. For our context, that could be within the church and our relationships with one another, relationships within this room. It certainly could be your blood brother or sister, a parent, a family member, someone close to you. And what we have here is the blueprint of the heart that we must have in Christian friendships. Now don't get me wrong, don't throw this out with people that aren't Christians. This works with non-Christians too. So what we have here, this is the ethos to have successful one another relationships. Successful friendships. Deeper friendships. I'd like to illustrate this, and I'm going to ask Sebastian to help me. He's been forewarned.
Come on, Sebastian.
We're going to ask Sebastian to sit right here where everyone can see him. Because he has a speck.
Oh.
This is my chair. I'm here to help him. This man needs help. He needs help. I've noticed, I've perceived the speck in his eye. That's very troubling to the church and to me as well. Our relationship. Now, I'm going to give you 4 approaches to helping one another. 4 approaches. And Sebastian could just be anyone, right? He could be your brother or sister. He could be a family member. He could be, well, not him necessarily, but he represents a spouse. All right? Any type of relationship where you are going to have real conversations and you expect that kind of depth and you want to help one another. I'm going to give you 4 approaches. And approach number 1 is the ridiculous example that Jesus is giving us. Approach number 1, all right? So here's Sebastian. I've noticed over time, and I need to help this poor soul. And so what I want to do is I want to get this speck out of his eye. I need to get this speck. See, I'm trying to help you to get this speck out of your eye. Now, you've got to watch his reaction to that. This is really not, would you say, the best method? Especially if I'm going after his eye. Right? So, that's one approach. That's the first approach. That's what Jesus is talking about. Now, I want you to notice where I am here. Where does a judge sit or stand in the courtroom? Above everyone else. And this is what Jesus is getting at here. I am coming to him, trying to fix this poor soul, or either he's just aggravating me, and I'm going to fix him from above. And not only that, I have my own issue. A major issue. I'm going to do damage to him if I follow through with this. All right, that's approach number 1. Now you think through which approach you would like best if someone was to come to you. Think about how you would want to be treated. Approach number 2. All right, he's still there. He has that issue. But instead of addressing him directly, I will go the satirical route. Sarcasm. passive-aggressive words. In other words, I think if you've been married, you'll understand this. When I say passive-aggressive, let's say he's my wife. Poor guy. All right? We're around here, and I go, wow, that rubbish really is smelling. That bin really is getting full, isn't it, honey? I'm trying to help him, sort of, but I'm speaking in code. And, and I may be just coming over here like, yeah, that rubbish bin, it's making everyone uncomfortable because they're going, well, who's he talking to? Are you with me? Yeah. Like, I'm stating a problem, I'm trying to deal with a problem, but it's in code, so we're making a joke about it, or we're passive-aggressive, and it's not direct speaking the truth in love. Plus, I have this plank in my eye. So everyone's uncomfortable that hears me address this situation in approach number 2. Now, if you prefer that, think about it. I personally don't. All right, so that's approach number 2. I criticize in code, and I have this communication that he's not really sure, because he could be sitting here going, well, yeah, it does stink. And I'm thinking, well, he's the one that should be doing something about it. Yeah. So that's another approach. Approach number 3. I'll move back a little bit because I need to get away from him. Actually, I'll turn this way. So we have this issue with each other. Right? But maybe we've tried to deal with it. Maybe not. Or maybe we have flashbacks of trying to deal with something with someone else before and it didn't go so well. So we have a silent truce. So we're just here, and it goes in here and stays there in a dark place in our heart. And there's a gap between us. And if we're in the same church, this can happen and go on for years. And we're both sitting there in the same room, week after week, trying to pretend there's not this elephant running around in the room. Or perhaps I'm going, well, if my minister could get the plank out of his eye, then he could go deal with him. So that's approach number 3. We're stuck, and we can be stuck for years. Now, the first 3 approaches, these are learned, but not from the Word of God. They're imitated quite often. They're dysfunctional. We learn them, but they're not in the teaching of Jesus. Nowhere to be found in the Bible. All right, so approach number 4. Come back. Approach number 4. I see this problem in my brother. It's somewhat personal. It could be very personal, perhaps, between us. He has this speck in his eye. I go up and I'm thinking, how am I going to fix this? And all of a sudden I go, all right, I need something here. This will help. Oh my. I am ridiculous. How could I be helping him? How could I be helping him from up here? And then I open my Bible and I look at Matthew 5:3. I look at Matthew 5:4, and it says, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn over their sin, for they will be comforted." So I put these away. I deal with myself. I don't take years to do it. I deal with myself. I humble myself. I take the plank off. I may still have issues, but I humble myself. And if I want to help this man, maybe it's better I come from here. And then I look, because you think about the eye is the most sensitive part of the body. So this needs to be handled, to help him, needs to be handled with great care, attention, and love. If I'm going to even get close to the eye. If I'm going to get in there. And so now I'm better equipped. If I'm coming from either equal or below, I'm in a much better position, for he is disarmed, he trusts me, I'm at his level or below his level, and I'm able to help take this speck out of his eye. You know what else? I may get closer to him to go take the speck out of his eye, and I might realize, oh, there's not a speck there after all. I was wrong, now that I looked closer and asked a few questions and interacted with him. That's approach number 4. Thank you. Which approach do you prefer? How do you want to be treated? How do you want to be treated? And Jesus says in verse 12, so in everything, do to others what you would have them do to you. For this sums up all the law and the prophets. So a lot of times we have to think about, how would I want to be treated? You know, there are 59 one another commands in the New Testament. 59 one another commands for the first century church, passed on to us. And these commands, that's why they're commands, they're not optional. Right? These are the 59 one another's that define Christian relationships. And these 59 are they're not just commands to punish us, they're actually a blessing. These 59 one another's that govern Christian relationships, they actually facilitate growth in one another. To deepen our friendships and to become more and more like Jesus. Discipling relationships. Whatever you want to call it. Over, under, peer, all different levels. I think many of us have tried those, are trying those now, with mixed results. And I'll tell you, from my own mistakes, my own arrogance, my own immaturity as a Christian, my own experience with hurting people, and I'll do it again, and I apologize in advance. Please forgive me. But for my own sin, my own shortcomings in this area, here's what I learned. The 59 will only work when the ethos of today's teaching sinks deeply into a man's heart. Because here's the reality. All of us, every single one of us, we are all face down in the same dirt, looking up at the cross of Christ. So, Jesus says, do not judge. And I pray that today's explanation has begun to clear up any confusion you may have experienced with this vital teaching of Jesus. And I appeal to you, spend some time this week. Take time later today. Get it going tomorrow. Think deeply about these things. Dig into the Scriptures yourself. I will help you. I will give you references to think deeply about these things. Do your own Bible study, your own self-reflection. You see how important it was to be self-aware. Humbly, later this week, discuss these things in your family groups throughout the city. Humbly. And if you are so bold, ask others how you come across. Because we're not always self-aware. And then if we're together for years and years and years, we become more and more gun-shy about sharing these things with someone else on both ends. But let's think deeply about these things. The seeds of Jesus have been scattered on your hearts today. Do not allow the birds to come in and steal that seed away. We want that seed to be watered. We want it to grow in your hearts. And you have to have a visual of this. Just imagine what this church would look like. What it would feel like when we're together. When our hearts turn and obey this Scripture. When this becomes who we are. When this describes how we view ourselves and how we view one another. Just imagine what this church would feel like, what it would look like. Just imagine breaking free of any guilt. Breaking free, letting go of insecurity with one another. Letting go of proving ourselves. Letting others off the hook. The laughter. The laughter I saw on the volleyball court last Sunday. But more often, the closeness, the love, these things take time, they take humility, but can you see it? The care, the concern, the empathy. Just imagine long-time relationships getting unstuck and back together again. Marriages that aren't just persevering, but they're dynamic and they're thriving once again. That's following Jesus. That's the opportunity we have to follow Him. Imagine that. If we just do what He says. The greater depth that will be discovered. New relationships amongst each other where Christ is formed at the foot of the cross. Where we're all equal. Just imagine the response of our friends, our family, our neighbors. When they see us begin to reflect this light of Jesus that's completely foreign to them in human relationship. They'll see us reflect the light of Jesus. They will see kingdom relationships. All heaven will break loose in Edinburgh. I truly believe, brothers and sisters, our best days as Christians are right in front of us. I'm going to ask Ben to come up and pray, and then we will sing a final song.